Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here with you, as always. Just a couple of quick announcements. For those of you who missed it, I'm going to start offering inquiry questions that I'm going to invite you to sit with throughout the week in between the different satsangs. And so this last week, we had 3 questions, and Denny offered a really beautiful response, and I'd just like to share what he wrote. The questions were about surrender, and let me back up a moment and just say I'm going to post these questions on the Facebook page, and so you can just glance at the questions throughout the week. And if you would like, I encourage you to sit with these questions deeply in a meditative way, and then even write a little response in the comments section under the questions on the Facebook page. It's just another way to connect with the teachings and to deepen. But this is from Danny this last week. For me, the essence of surrender is contained in all 3 questions: surrendering to the discomfort of the unknown, then surrendering to being led by the unknown, and finally surrendering to knowing that which I surrendered to is the very essence of myself. And I really was touched by what Danny wrote. I don't think I could have said it better myself. I'll read his response again. For me, the essence of surrender is contained in all 3 questions: surrendering to the discomfort of the unknown, then surrendering to being led by the unknown. And this is so important, these 2 points that Danny brings forward. Most of us, when we face the unknown, we become quite uncomfortable, even fearful. And so we must be willing to surrender to the discomfort, be willing to feel something maybe we don't want to feel. And then the invitation goes a little bit deeper from Danny, then surrendering to being led by the unknown. So this is where trust comes forward. In order for us to be awake in the world, we have to do what Danny is saying here, to be led by the unknown, to realize the unknown has an intelligence to it. And he goes on to write, and finally, surrendering to the knowing that which I surrendered to is the very essence of myself. The very essence of myself. And see, as we mature along the path, we realize that God is always calling out to us. Life is calling out to us. That the experience of the unknown is calling to us. And when you begin to walk in the direction of the unknown, you begin to wake up from the inside out, realizing, oh, there's a quality of being right here, right now. Quality of this being that I am, that is unknown, that is mysterious, that is quite free. And so this last sentence, he says, and finally, surrendering to knowing that which I surrendered to is the very essence of myself. And so thank you, Danny. Thanks for sharing your hearts with us. How beautiful it is what you wrote. And so this week's questions, which I encourage each of you to open to, is what is my relationship with the innocence of my being? What is my relationship with the innocence of being? The innocence of being. The second question, what could I give up to more fully recognize this quality of being? So one of the most tender and humble doorways into the space of non-dual awakening is through the doorway of innocence. The doorway of innocence. And so as we all know that when we are in a deeply divided state of consciousness, you tend to feel pretty harsh inside. It feels like hell. It feels like, you can feel like a bag of rocks, just rough, just banging up against each other, banging up against life. But as you walk into, step into, open to the presence of innocence that you are, the walls within you that divide you, the walls of ego have to melt to enter the doorway of innocence. And so I encourage you all to play with this question. What is my relationship with the innocence of my being? I'm always a little bit shocked when I meet with someone and I ask them if they know how innocent their presence is. And they look at me like I'm, just like a crazy man. Because I'm seeing something in them that they cannot see themselves. And, one of the things that's helpful in realizing your innocence is if you have any pets, or if you hang out with any children, or if you spend any time in nature. And when you walk out into nature, the hugeness of the sky is just inviting you to surrender, to melt, to open. The hugeness of the daytime sky, is bright and vast and endless. The nighttime sky comes with just such a quality of immensity. But also, most human beings can't just but help to look out at the night sky and have this sense of just eternity. And in a childlike way, oftentimes, us humans, we're looking for UFOs, for shooting stars, for signs of life, for different planets and satellites. And all these are, they're childlike things where you're gazing into the mystery of the universe. And so I encourage you to sit with this question of what is my relationship? If you do not know what I'm speaking about, the innocence of your being, I encourage you to go outside, to give yourself permission to jump in the cold ocean or dip in the river, the lake, to go lay in the grass and just gaze up at the clouds and the beauty of this planet. And I encourage you, if you're, a crusty old adult, to maybe hop on a swing set, or some monkey bars, and just give yourself permission to be a kid. Do something that you haven't done in a long time. Get down on your knees and look at an anthill or roll around in the grass a little bit. Being childlike is such a beautiful doorway. It's so much it's so much nicer than trying to strive after enlightenment. Just getting down on your hands and knees and becoming one with the earth, the grass, the dandelions, whatever's here. I live in such a beautiful place, and my wife, she really hurt her back. Her ribs is what she hurt. And my birthday's coming up here in, I guess, a day. And she was trying to plan this big weekend for me and to show me a good time. And, I told her, oh, sweetie, you just lay on the couch here. I'll take Ani and, I'll give you a break, and, you make yourself a bath or something. And I never been one to, to care too much about birthday parties, especially for myself. For my little girls, or my girls, it's different. But for me, it's like, I could care less. It's just another day. But so I took my little girl, and we were going to go play some frisbee golf, out in the Hermosa Creek Valley. But when we got there, the park was closed, I assume for this silly virus that's going on. So we drove up the road a little bit, and there's this very odd structure that's just coming up out of the earth. It's a hot spring, and if any of you have ever seen a mineral spring, this one, instead of it being a pool, it's actually created like its own little mountain, maybe 15, 20 feet tall. But then it's just leaching off minerals for like maybe about 1/8 of a mile. It just has this big drainage, and kind of has those colors like you'd see in Yellowstone at I think that geyser is called Old Faithful. But we were just playing around on this thing, and it's like a mountain. It literally looks like a miniature volcano, but instead of spitting lava, it's just bubbling water out of the top. And so me and Ani were just playing around on it, and her dad was busy telling her, don't step in the water. I just bought you brand new shoes. Because the water, it's like orange and red, and it has all these just wild colors. It looked like something from a Martian moon, this hot spring. And I've lived here for I don't know how long, maybe 25 years, maybe even longer. And I've driven past this hot spring, I mean, probably 1,000 times. But today we stopped and we played around, and, we got muddy, we got messy. And I was just standing there. And we were in the middle of this big valley with just huge walls on both sides. And there was hawks floating around us, just screeching, these beautiful screeches. The sky was the most pristine blue. And here I was with my little girl, just getting muddy and messy. Just absolutely in love with life. The innocence of my being, the innocence of this moment, the innocence of my daughter, the innocence of nature, all is one movement, one presence. I wasn't trying to do any great spiritual practice. I wasn't chanting the name of God. I was just giving myself permission just to be human in the most simple of ways, just trying to be a good father. And here life was awakening to me. And just like how Denny had written here, and finally surrendering to the knowing that which I surrendered to is the very essence of myself. So when you surrender to life, you realize that life is the essence of your being, essence of all beings. You experience this huge, vast, free, interconnected presence. And so anyways, Danny, thank you again for sharing your heart. You gave me something good to speak about as I started today. Let's see if I have any other announcements. A big thank you to all of you offering donations, and just for your generosity of spirit of supporting the Sangha, supporting these videos. And another thing I'd like to say is, about my birthday, like I don't really care about my birthday. And Occasionally I see these comments on YouTube, and I received this comment a couple of different times, and somebody said, uh, about my channel. They said, I can't believe, I think they said this guy, meaning me, doesn't have and I love it that they used 100,000 subscribers, because they were thinking that there was something of value here. And I've received this comment a couple different times, and of course, in no way do I ever want to be a proselytizer or amass, a big following or anything like that. But I thought I would just respond to what he wrote. I don't care if there's one person here or 1,000. But if there is something that you're finding good here, and you want to share it with a friend, share it. If you want to bring a friend, bring a friend. My teacher used to say this to me. He would say, Craig, if you think you have a friend who's interested, you're welcome to bring them. But just don't bring anyone, and definitely don't be going around proselytizing. No one really likes a proselytizer. We're not the kind of group that's going to, stand on a soapbox and preach the good news. But you can share the good news with your smile, with your heart. But if you have a friend that you think would like to show up to our Wednesday evening meditation groups, then by all means bring them. Or to our Sunday evening Sangha, bring them. I'm happy with whoever shows up. And like I said, what I'm looking for is for people who are deeply interested in this question of what it means to be fully human and fully divine. This intersection of the two, where the two become one, through surrendering very much how Denny wrote today. And so, anyways, just an invitation. If you have a friend, they're welcome. And if you just want to show up with yourself, I'll send you the same love. Okay, here. So I have a bunch of questions that I can get to, but let me just see if anyone here on Zoom has a question. I'll be happy to speak with you if you want to raise your hand. The function is down at the bottom in the controls. But here's a question from Rebecca, and I see Rebecca's joining us tonight. This is along the lines of that childlike innocence I was speaking about. Rebecca writes, I teach kindergarten. And so, Rebecca, just right away, I'm going to just bow before you and say, I think only saints are qualified to teach kindergarten. And so we'll all just bow before you right now. It's such a sweet job. I once owned or was a co-owner in a daycare. I wasn't a teacher, but I was Mr. Fix-It is what all the little kids called me, when I walked in the door. And then they'd climb all over me. It'd be hard for me to get any work done. But I'd fix anything in the classroom that broke and build them forts and all kinds of stuff to play on. So Rebecca writes, I teach kindergarten and have noticed many of my own students are what I call old souls, very awake, very high energy, and quite uncontrollable in a good way. They have minds of their own, are very worldly, and love unicorns, magic, dragons, sparkly objects of all kinds. Yeah, welcome to my house, Rebecca. I can't tell you how many unicorns I trip over just in the middle of the night, just trying to get up and go to the restroom here. Is there a way I can, as a teacher, help these children to stay awake? I feel they are harbingers of a new world order. I love teaching, but feel that public schools are not providing the heart-centered, grounded environments these newly incarnate old souls need to thrive. I may start my own nature school someday. How can we keep awake children awakened and help their parents awaken. Thank you with love. Rebecca, one of the things I'm going to encourage you to do is just to acknowledge that you are doing this. You are doing this. And so I had a brief stint as a public school teacher. I used to work for my teacher in the day, and when I was going to college, so I'd go to college and like go to my classes, and then go work on my teacher's land. And then after that, in the evenings, I studied education and how to be a teacher. They gave me a teaching job when I was, gosh, I might have been 20 years old. I probably just turned 20 when they gave me a job. And, I taught high school though. And there were all kinds of rules and standards about what I was supposed to teach. And, we read the autobiography of the Dalai Lama. I talked about Jesus every day. I talked about the great Hindu saints, the yogic saints. I taught meditation and mindfulness. We had so much fun. It was, we had really good times. I mean, they drove me crazy, but we had really good times. And I just did what I wanted to because that's what my heart told me. I didn't teach Shakespeare or, grammar or those types of things like I was supposed to be teaching. I taught what was in my heart. I shared my innocence with them. And so I encourage you to do the same. If you want to take the kids outside, take them outside and be outside. I mean, my sense about children is they should just be outside all the time. And I encourage you to start your own nature school. We had one of those at my house too. It was summertime nature camp. And I guess we did have a preschool that was outside too. And so we spent all of our time as much as we could outside, unless it had snowed 4 feet. And even if it did, we'd go out and play with it. I can remember one time my little boy, during one of these preschools, we got out the sled and we had chickens at the time. And he picked up one of his favorite chickens and put the chicken in his lap and would go sledding down the hill with the chicken. And, it sounds silly. It even sounds a little bit hillbilly. But when the little kids, can develop a relationship with the animals, with Mother Nature, with the trees, and just seeing the majesty of the world, how there's a whole universe in a blade of grass. Nurture their innocence. Let them play. Help them to smile. Teach them that they don't have to be serious like the other old grumpy human beings are. That's one of the things that I have to remind myself is that I'm getting old, and I always think of myself as a little kid, and I think it's a beautiful attitude to have. Just to imagine yourself as a little kid, because as you do, the innocence of your heart, it shines in all directions, and you don't build up so many of those egoic walls, where people in life take things to be so serious. I can remember when I was in like the 6th grade, and the girls, they wore these jeans, had a horse on the back. I think it said Jordache on it. And for some reason, the girls decided that that was something important, that was something meaningful, that was something serious. And that's when things really started to change. It was in middle school, and we really took on our image. And the more you teach that for kids just to fall in love with their own hearts, their own presence, their own sense of wonder and awe, that's what keeps the door of The door of freedom open, the door of awakening open, the door of being open. You nurture their hearts. You nurture their hearts. That's our job as a teacher, to nurture their hearts, and to comfort them and let them know it's okay. It's okay to be open. I think, they get into second and third and fourth grade. Kids get beat up a little bit by life. And so one of the most supportive ways that we can help this presence of innocence is helping kids also to realize how strong they are. But one of the ways that we normally teach children how to be strong is we unconsciously or consciously, depending on what kind of parent we are, we teach a kid how to repress their feelings. But in order to allow your heart to be awake and to be open, you have to be willing to feel everything. And this requires a level of strength. And so, often like we teach little boys, it's not okay to cry. But a different thing to teach a little boy or a little girl, a little child is it is okay to cry. It's okay to feel. It's okay to experience. It's okay, like Danny was writing, to get comfortable with discomfort. It's okay. And to help them find their inner backbone, like their inner strength. So when my little girl and I, when we were walking on this big volcanic hot spring, I wish I had a picture of this thing because it looks so wild. She was walking along on what she thought was hard ground. And I told her to jump, like across this little stream to her daddy. Instead of jumping sideways to me, she jumped forward. And she just slid and just slid on her butt and turned her whole back orange, from this mud. And I looked at her and I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And she said, she got up and she just looked at her bottom. She said, "Oh yeah, Dad, I'm okay. I'm okay." And so for her dad to tell her, "You're so strong. You're so strong, sweetie. You're strong. You can fall down and you can get up." This is what keeps the doorway of innocence open. If we have innocence, yet we are afraid to feel, it's the same as having awareness, but being afraid to feel. Awareness will eventually close. Because in order to be awake, you have to trust in life. You have to trust that it's okay to stay open. And so this is one of the great things that we teach children and can teach ourselves is to trust that it's okay to be open. It's okay to feel. It's okay to be seen. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to be humiliated. It's okay to defend yourself. It's okay to speak up. It's okay to be quiet. It's okay. And to realize the okayness of life. And this is one of the greatest things that we need in staying awake. And so, Rebecca, what a great question. And one of the gifts that you can give the parents is to call the parents boys and girls. Call them boys and girls. And a lot of parents might think that's humiliating, but Miss Long, who is my daughter's kindergarten teacher, on the first day of school, she invited everyone in the classroom and invited, all the little boys and girls to sit up front and all the big boys and girls to sit in the back, the big boys and girls being the adults. And oftentimes I call grown adults boys or girls or just, or sweetie or this or that. And I've gotten in a lot of trouble from people because they misunderstand what I'm saying. And, there was some, I spoke at a conference once and called one of my colleagues, or a couple of my colleagues, girls. Said, "What do you girls, what do you girls have to say next?" And, some of the women in the room thought I was being offensive. But when I look out at life, I see all of us as boys and girls, just these little innocent beings here on planet Earth, little innocent beings. And we don't need to take ourselves so seriously like most adults do. We don't have to take such great offense if someone doesn't bow before our adultness. So anyways, beautiful question, Rebecca. Okay, let's see what's here. Here's a question from Richard. Hi, Craig. I find myself in an addictive cycle with marijuana. Would you please speak to addiction tonight? Thank you. Yeah. Marijuana addiction, boy, is that a big one where I live in the state of Colorado, especially in my little town. When I drive down Main Street, I can see a line at the ice cream shop, and I can also see a line, of people with masks waiting in line at the marijuana shop. And I just think it's hilarious, that people are waiting in line to buy marijuana. When I was a kid, I was a young hippie, and boy, the police, they would beat the heck out of us for smoking marijuana. And we used to sign petitions about it becoming legal. And I can't even believe it is now. It's such a shock. But anyways, the thing about marijuana is it's a very easy addiction to fall into. And one of the things that marijuana does is it really softens the edge, and it begins to melt some of these walls, the egoic walls that cause us so much pain, so much division. And marijuana, it's, at least in Colorado, it's cheap and it's easy. And so it's easy just to get kind of hooked into it. It's an easy habit to develop. It's socially acceptable, for the most part. But one of the things that I realized when I was quite young is trying different substances, marijuana, or psilocybin, psychedelics, these types of things, was that, basically you smoke it and then the experience starts of, just feeling more light, more free. But then the experience fades. And for me, I was interested in an experience that did not come and go. An experience that did not come and go. And on the path, addiction is always a question of power. A power, and what do you want? Like, what kind of life do you want? And so anytime we are addicted to something, basically it's like we take our power out of our solar plexus and out of our hara, and we give it to someone else, something else. And we say, you have the power. You have it. You have power over me. So as soon as you believe in an addiction, you give your power away. It's a very dangerous game. If you want to be awake in an abiding way, we can't be addicted to anything except God, except freedom, except for peace and spaciousness and love and compassion. And so I try to channel my addiction always into God, into the truth. And as you do so, you take your power back. You take your power back. And I'm a big fan if we've developed a physical addiction to try to wean ourselves off of it. And so just go slow and steady, just reducing the amount you use. And for some people that works, the weaning. For other people, they just have to cold turkey it, and that's the only way. Um, and to call upon God to give you strength, to let go of this thing, to let go of it. And the thing about marijuana is it's fun, it's like, hanging out, and it's fun. And at least when I was a kid, it was it was a ritual thing that we did. We all sit in a circle and share it together, and so it was fun, and there was a sense of community in it. But I'm going to invite you to have community with God, community with the truth. And the thing about marijuana is it can help you in the beginning, just kind of open up to something real quick. But then very quickly you'll see that it can only take me so far. And the same is true with psychedelics. They only take you so far. And then you need more and more and more. And it just tends to be a vicious cycle. And so, Richard, I'm going to encourage you, to say out loud, I have power over my own body. I have power over this addiction. I'm wanting something greater. I'm wanting something greater. You can thank the marijuana and then give it back to the marijuana gods. In India, there's all these old pictures of, I think it's Shiva, smoking ganja, and the sadhus smoking ganja. And it's a funny thing, but when I was walking the streets of India and saw those sadhus, their eyes were all glazed over, and they didn't look like they were awake. They just looked like they were high. And that's when I realized, that's not my path. It's not my path. And you must find the same within your own self. But addiction is always about power. And so much of addiction has to do with self-soothing. And another thing that we do, Rebecca, to help children realize their strength is we teach them how to self-soothe. We teach them how to calm their emotions. And a lot of us weren't taught properly how to self-soothe. And so then when we grow up and we're adults and we're like, oh, well, I'll just self-soothe with, like my drug of choice is chocolate. I just love chocolate. But, just a couple bites of chocolate and, that's enough for me. But a lot of people self-soothe with marijuana or alcohol. And you'll find it just never really satisfies. It doesn't really, it's just like masking the symptoms. But a great way to self-soothe is to place two hands on your heart, or one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And you just breathe in this sense of, I love you and it's okay. I love you and it's okay. When we have mindfulness awareness, and if you look the moment right before you have the thought to smoke, I want you to notice, Richard, how your body feels. There's a subtle form of agitation, a subtle form of like angst or heartache or sadness or boredom. And a great question for inquiry is, can I be with this? Can I be with this subtle agitation? Can I be with this subtle pain or this immense pain? Can I be with this? Can I be with this? This pain that's here. Can I be with this? And so, I don't think marijuana is a bad thing in any way. For a lot of people like who have cancer diagnosis, it can be a very helpful thing. It's an herb. It can be very helpful with the nausea and the aching and the pain in the body. But unless we have something serious, I don't recommend using any kind of drugs, on a daily basis. You know, if it just wants to be once on the weekend or something, it's like, hey, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. There's far worse things to do. But, you know, someone like me, I have great discipline, so I can do something once on a weekend and not develop a habit. Other people, if they pick it up once on a weekend, then they smoke it all day, every day afterwards. And so you have to know your own self. Like with me, how much chocolate to eat. How much chocolate to eat before you get cavities or your belly starts to hurt. For me, I'm very sensitive, so just a couple bites. Just a couple bites. So anyways, thanks for sharing, Richard. It's a good question. I think a lot of people use marijuana, and they or are addicted to one thing or another, and they tend to just let the addiction hang out in the shadow. But one of the greatest, you know, ways to clear an addiction is just to bring it into the light and say, I'm going to work with this. I'm going to have mastery over this. I'm in charge of my body, not this thing, not this thing. Okay, here's another question. Hi, Craig. What are your thoughts on free will, or has our path already been figured out? Yeah, this is a great question. You know, I can remember many years ago, I was having a conversation with one of my teachers, Adya, and we were speaking about free will together. And basically, you know, I was asking, you know, do we have free will or not? And, you know, he didn't tell me the answer, but just what the two of us came to is both are true. And that's the great paradox of this life, is both are true. We have free will, and everything is already written. And see, just saying that, you know, that makes the mind say, how can that be? It's either this way or that way. But the greatest truths are both and even neither. Do we have free will? So when you are awake to who and what you are, you have free will. When you're in your ego, there is no free will. But also, paradoxically, when you are awake to what you are, you realize that your will and God's will is already one. Is already one. It's one will. It's one movement. When you step back far enough and look at your life, you might begin to realize that there were these patterns, these contracts, these places of magmatism, where even if you were fully awake, you couldn't even stop yourself from falling into that hole or that trap, because there was something your soul needed to learn. And so that's a whole other level of it, that there's soul contracts that we can't avoid. There's definite things that we've come to this incarnation to learn. And they're unavoidable. You know, I can say this, that all my greatest fears and greatest nightmares, I had premonitions of all of them. And so far, they've all come true. They've all come true in just a horrific way, tragic way, a terrible way. But then as I outlive them, I begin to realize the great intelligence in them. The great intelligence. My teacher used to look at me, and I know I've told this story often, but he would look at my life, and there was so many just dramas and tragedies and just chaos when I was with my teacher. He would look at me and say, my God, I don't know anyone who's had so much drama. And I'm a pretty boring guy, but just drama tended to come my way, you know. It just seemed like, you know, I could see like a mud pie in a distance, and then someone would pick up that mud pie and just throw it in my face. I'd be like, oh, look, there it is. But I could see it. I would see it in the distance, and I'd have a vision of that thing hitting me. And then eventually it did. And my teacher, he was just shocked. He would say, I don't understand why all these things happen to you, Craig. And, but later on, I've come to learn it's helped me to connect with so many people who've had lives of great suffering. You know, if I just had an easy life, I wouldn't be able to connect to people who lived in great pain. And so often it'd be 10 years later and someone would say, have you ever experienced something like this? And I'd say, oh yeah, I know that one. I know it intimately well. That's often why I laugh at people's suffering, is because I've been there before. I've been there before. So anyways, is there free will? The more awake you are and connected with your heart, then you can choose from a place of freedom. But if you are connected to your ego, you're just a slave to what the ego is telling you. One of the great ways our country has become enslaved in the last 4 years is the polarization of the right and the left, the polarization that our news media sources have given us. You know, when I meet with someone who watches purely Fox News, even though they live in the same world as the rest of us, they have a very unique viewpoint. And then when I meet with someone who's, you know, like on the far left and listens to something like Only Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, they have a very particular, you know, I'll use this word, woke, you know, worldview. And these two people, they can even live in the same household. You know, have the same bank account, drive the same car, the same home, the same sky above them. But we become enslaved, you know, through the different sources of media that we are ingesting. It's another great way that most of us are addicted, and we don't even know it. We're addicted to our news. Are addicted to our news. You know, how many people are sitting down and are addicted to what's his name? Tucker Carlson. I think that's his name, Tucker Carlson, like Fox News guy. But how many people are addicted to him, or how many people are addicted to, you know, Amy Goodman? And they get addicted to that perspective. They get flooded with that perspective. And when you do, you can't think for yourself, can't see for yourself. You can't make a decision based on your own truth. On your own truth. And so if we want to have free will, you have to be willing to let go of all conditioning and come into your heart naked and alone. And ask your heart, what is the truth here? If we all did this as a country, we would quickly heal. We would quickly heal. And see that we have so much more in common than we think. You know, I have a number of friends who are in the military, and, you know, if I look on their, whatever it is, Instagram feed or Twitter feed, they're on this, standing on a soapbox preaching about gun rights and the Second Amendment, like Obama's going to come back, I want to say, from the grave, but he's going to come back from his former presidency and take everyone's guns away. And it's like, no one's taking your guns. Relax, breathe, walk outside and see you're safe. You're safe. No one's coming to get you. No one's coming to get you. It's okay. Breathe, feel, relax. And just come into your being and see that it's okay right here, right now. Right here, right now. And so free will, yeah. Or has our life already been figured out? It's all been figured out. It's all been figured out. Okay. You're the one who made the play as well. Keep that in mind, by the way. Great question, Colleen. Um, Hi, Barbara from Down Under. This one's from Lee. Hi, Craig. Can you talk about resistance? Wanting to sit and meditate, but not getting around to it. I used to sit almost every day. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the big thing about meditation is, I think the most helpful way is just how my teacher taught me. Get up, go to the potty, come back and sit. And just sit. And so don't do anything else. Get up, go to the potty, maybe drink a big glass of water, and then just sit. Sit and don't move. Do it first thing in the morning. Once the day gets going, you just don't get around to doing it. And so you have to make a commitment. You have to make a commitment. I heard this great talk by this Navy SEAL guy, Jocko Willink. I think that's his name. He has these short, like 2 or 3 minute videos about motivation. And it sounds like he's just yelling at you, but he transmits motivation. He transmits discipline. And so you want to connect with some of that type of energy, the energy of motivation. And I love listening to something like this before bedtime, because if I do, I'm going to wake up right at 5 a.m. If I don't, I might wake up at 5:45. But I encourage you to get in touch with the energy of motivation. Find someone who you're attracted to and let them light the fire of your heart. Let them light the fire of your heart. Normally, if you get up and you sit 3 days in a row, after you get past the third day, it becomes much easier. They say it takes about 3 days to create a new habit. But first thing in the morning, also sit right before bed, because then you go to sleep in a meditative state. And when you wake up, you just want to meditate. You want to meditate. Wanting to meditate, but not getting around to do it. The other thing that can be real helpful is to turn off your phone, to get rid of that thing, to go put it outside or put it in your car or something far away. If you sit with your phone right next to you and you start to get a little anxious, it's similar to sitting with a joint right next to you. You're just going to want to pick up that joint, or you're going to want to pick up that phone and distract and get lost in that. So get the substances, and the phone is absolutely a substance. Just get it out of your house. Say, I'm going to sit down and be here fully. Be here fully. See it as an act of love, a radical act of love. It's purely you time. Purely you time. Lee, the other thing, you can join us Wednesday nights for meditation. It can be helpful to be a part of a group for meditation, just to kind of get the ball rolling again. One of the things I was supposed to speak about in the beginning, but I forgot, was on Wednesday nights, there's a very powerful grace that's been blessing us, a wonderful transmission that's been coming through. And when a powerful transmission comes, oftentimes it helps give us strength, inner strength. It helps to open new doorways that possibly we weren't going to open on our own. And it opens us to new realms. It enlivens our practice. So I encourage you, Lee, to join us Wednesday nights. That goes to anyone who's listening. Okay, here's a question. Hi, Craig. I'm experiencing a lot of resistance, so much that there's a contraction in my body, interspersed with a blissful sensation also. And I can mostly feel resistance and trauma. Rage and anger have been very persistent, and I can feel how kundalini has such a difficult time in that environment. And I, in quotation marks, have been trying to fix it. This burning volcanic rage, like it's my responsibility. There is a part of me that desperately wants to fix and control all of this. that needs to know. That part of me is so strong. It's separation. He's holding on with everything he's got and in every cell of my body. I feel to bow to him now. Actually, he's very strong. To go through all this pain and what he's trying to protect. What is he trying to defend against? Yeah. And so the big thing with rage is, I'm going to say something silly. I could easily say I'm going to invite you to trust in God. Like, that's an easy thing for me to say. Trust in God. Vast, spacious innocence, freedom, love, compassion. But when we have a powerful emotion, I'm also going to invite you to trust in your powerful emotions. And this is what I mean by trusting in it. Trusting that it's okay to feel rage. It's okay to feel rage. Like Rebecca teaches kindergarten here, and one of the things she teaches the kids, that it's okay to feel a temper tantrum. Like, it's okay to feel that. When you feel a temper tantrum, and you just give yourself full permission just to have the tantrum, to kind of melt on the floor, and you just keep breathing and keep breathing and keep breathing, what you realize is a lot of energy just passed through my body. A lot of energy just passed through my body. And basically what the voice of resistance is saying is, I'm afraid to feel. I'm afraid of this big thing. But trusting in God and trusting in rage, it's the same leap of faith. Can you trust that it's okay to feel your anger? Yet, the kicker is the trick is can you feel your rage, the immensity of your rage, but not believe your thoughts? Not believe your thoughts. Not believe your thoughts. And so, like in a kindergarten classroom, the kids, sometimes they melt down, and they might get in little fights or little scuffles, and they might say, I hate little Johnny. I'm never going to play with him again. He's not my best friend, And they'll say that. But as a teacher in the room, as the adult, you love the kids, both of them, the two that are fighting. You give them the space just to let it unravel, but you don't believe a single thing they're saying. You don't believe their thoughts. You know that those two boys will be playing again in 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, they'll be playing again. And the same is true with our rage. When we're having volcanic rage, if we just let it flow but don't believe the thoughts, then the rage just moves through and it can transmute into the presence of power. But if you attach to the thoughts of rage, like of going postal and going crazy and punching someone in the face, you can kind of spin there for a really long time. If you start thinking about how much you hate Donald Trump, or how much you hate Nancy Pelosi, or whoever, Joe Biden. I think Joe Biden's going to fall asleep before he becomes president, but that's just me. We'll see. We'll see if he can make it all the way through the presidency. But we don't want to believe our thoughts. We don't want to believe our thoughts. So you give yourself permission to feel, yet not believe your thoughts. And see, this is the key to freeing resistance. Resistance is saying, I want to protect myself from feeling. That's a great question for inquiry. Do I need to protect myself from feeling? How big am I? Am I big enough to feel this? Or do I need to protect myself from feeling? If you want to be awake, you don't protect yourself from anything. To be awake is to be one with life, to be open, to have no walls. If you want to know oneness, you have to let go of the walls of protection. It's a great question here. Here's another question. Hi, Craig. I'm a mother of 2 boys and had an awakening experience. I still find that my greatest trigger is when one of my children becomes sick or faces a life challenge. Do you have any advice for mothers in terms of handling these deep motherhood attachment triggers? The first thing I'm going to invite you to do is take the word trigger out of your vocabulary and just acknowledge, as a mother, you love your kids. You love them deeply. You love them deeply. And to give yourself permission to feel that love, the immensity of that love. You know, I can remember I was watching, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was that movie Blackfish, if any of you have seen it, about the orcas who were, um, the baby orcas that were like stolen from their mothers and then shipped away to Sea World. But I can remember the mother, after her baby was taken away, she was just, she was like sitting in a cove somewhere, like in the ocean, and just grieving, just moaning. It was heart-wrenchingly sad. But as a mammal, when you have a child, you are supposed to be deeply attached to your children, deeply. And when your children are in pain, when they're suffering, it's important for you to grieve, just to acknowledge that life does hurt. One of the things that happens is the more you give yourself permission to grieve and to feel, you start to develop a different kind of strength, a strength that knows it's okay to feel immense pain and suffering, that there's something here that outlives pain and suffering, something here that's greater than pain and suffering. When you give yourself permission to feel deeply and fully, to love deeply and fully, you become connected with the timeless nature of your soul, the timeless nature. And when you become in touch with the timeless nature of your soul, you begin to see that all beings are also okay, even if they're not. Even if they're not. I can remember being in India, and in India you see immense suffering. There's so many just street children, and they're dirty. They're just wearing rags. They don't have running water. I mean, literally just like filthy. And I would buy these big racks of bananas. They're miniature bananas, but there's a whole rack of them. So you have like 30 bananas, and sometimes I just walk out in the street and I just start handing them out, and then I'd be mobbed by kids, and some of the kids, would have like an eye that was like burnt out, like someone had burnt their eye, deformed them. Some of them had missing fingers. But when I'd look into their eyes, or look into their face, look into their presence, I saw just this overwhelming innocence, an innocence that could not be destroyed. Could not be destroyed. I saw happiness and just light just shining from them, even though many of them had been deeply abused and were deeply, immensely disabled. But I saw that they were God. And there was something timeless within them. And I would cry at both their beauty and their pain. And this is one of the things that I've had to learn to do as a father, is to realize that my children don't belong to me. They belong to God, and they are God. I have to grieve that I can't control life. I can't protect them from harm. And the people you love will suffer. It's heartbreaking, this world. But I'm going to encourage you to allow this motherhood attachment to break you open and to see how much you love, how deeply you can love. And do you trust in the nature of the soul of your child, that your child is not just a physical body, but you trust that they are a soul being? Excuse me. We have another new forest fire where I'm at, and there's a little bit of smoke in the air here. And do you trust, like here in Colorado, me and my little girl, we were coming up over the mountain in the van, and we saw a whole hillside was black. And, it just made me cry, to see all these trees just burnt to ashes. And my little girl said, "Yeah, but Daddy, they're going to grow back again. This is a part of life." Forest fires. I looked at my 6-year-old girl. I said, "Yeah, you're right, sweetie. This is a part of life. Suffering is a part of life." But what we forget in suffering is an immense teacher. It's an immense awakener. It wakes us up. It makes us strong. It brings forth these qualities of innocence and forgiveness, strength, compassion, unconditional love. The only way to know unconditional love and unconditional strength, which are two of the greatest qualities of Buddha nature, are through the doorways of suffering, literally through walking through hell. Most people like to think of unconditional peace because that's easy. But or transcendent peace is easy. But anything unconditional means you must first walk through hell for this to be realized. And do you trust that the strength of your children, if life challenges them? Do you trust that? And just giving yourself also full permission in a surrendered way, just to be a mom, to cry with them, to hold them, to nurture them, to be humble. To be humble. I mean, life is a crushingly humiliating experience as a parent. I know this. Every parent knows this. If they don't know it now, they know it eventually. But there's an immense beauty in it, and an innocence that cannot be crushed. That's what you eventually learn from this experience. Most people like innocence that's bunny rabbit innocence, that just looks soft and cuddly, but doesn't have any strength or backbone. We want to have immense strength and backbone. Okay, beautiful question. Let's see what else here is here. Hi, Craig. How can I have faith? I had an awakening 6 years ago. That was lasting for a few months. I was thrown out of it brutally, getting very ill mentally and physically from this loss. I went from such a simple, grounded, open-hearted presence in the body to such horror within a few days. I perceived it as a punishment from God for simply having been happy and at ease. I spiraled down very far. Okay, I just want to just say something just real quick in response. God never punishes us. We live in an evolutionary world, and God is all loving. And this is an immense paradox. God is not a parent who's wanting to punish us. I mean, that'd be a terrible God. Punish us. And I would be in hell, by the way. If God was giving out punishments, I'd be at the bottom of the barrel myself. So in an evolutionary world, evolution oftentimes we often grow through taking these huge leaps of consciousness in an evolutionary way, a huge leap forward. And then we tend to come back to, almost where we were before. Sometimes even it seems seemingly lower. And what we're invited to do is to bring this grace of realization, to invite this grace, this strength, this quality of truth. What you're asking about here is faith. So God showed you the truth, and so then threw you back in hell. How can I have faith? What other choice do you have? What other choice than to have faith? To know that you cannot unsee what you saw, unknow what you know. Your other choice is to listen to your ego, that God is trying to punish you. Anytime you have a thought that God is trying to punish you, by the way, it's a sign of having unworthiness in your consciousness. And one of the ways we have faith is through realizing we are a child of God and therefore absolutely worthy. So what's happening here is God is not punishing you, but inviting you to see that unworthiness is in your consciousness. It's taken root, and it needs to be healed and met with love. It needs to be healed and met with love. Frida goes on to write, now my kundalini is activated, and I can see that there is work for me to do, but how can I find faith again through this new spiritual journey when the loss of the last one left me terrified? I really struggle. So the ego has this idea that if it happened once, it's going to happen again. So if I walk outside in the dark and I fall down, I can never walk outside in the dark or else I'll fall down again. I'll tell a terrible story about me and my 6-year-old. This is when she was 5. Yeah, I think 5, maybe even 4, probably 5. I was teaching her how to ride her bike last year. And so I took the training wheels off, and I took them off a little bit early. And, I was doing that thing where she was pedaling and I was holding her bike seat, like underneath it from behind, just running alongside of her, holding up the bike seat so she wouldn't fall over. And then I'd let her go for just little bits of little moments. And she would, keep pedaling and she was realizing, I'm riding the bike. And we were doing it again and again and again. And then, the last time I did it, I was running behind her and I let go. And as soon as I let go, she turned her steering wheel 90 degrees. And then she fell on her face like right away, but I was running and I was right behind her. And then I just stepped on her and then fell on her. It's like the worst thing a dad could do for a little girl. It was just a terrible moment in history. And, she like hit her teeth on the pavement. She's, scratched her hands all up, and plus she had the weight of her big dad. Just landed, stepped on her, then fell on her because I got tangled in her bike and everything. And what is she doing right now? She's outside riding her bike right now. Riding her bike. If she didn't have faith that she would heal, if I didn't have faith that she would heal, she didn't have faith that she could learn to ride again, and we'd be on the couch. We'd be on the couch. And so you experience terror. And so God is inviting you to ask, do you bow before the God of terror that once visited you to teach you about strength and faith, by the way? So do you bow before the God of terror, or do you bow before the God of light? If you want to bow before the God of light, if you want to know true freedom and love, you must open your heart again. You must open your heart again. Okay. Let me just check over, make sure I did. Answered all the questions here. Here's another one. Hi, Craig. This is a great question from Peter. Hi, Craig. What role do angels have in our path? I had a random intuition to say a mantra, angel, recently, and felt a very sweet presence enter through the top of my head and touch my heart. Yeah, I'll say this. Often when I meet with an individual, their angels show up, and their angels kind of are hanging out in the background behind them. And every now and then the angels kind of, tell me, hey, will you let them know I'm here? Will you let them know I'm here? That they can call upon me, they can ask for support. This is another thing, Rebecca, we can do with our kids, is we can pray with our kids. We can invite their angels to come forward to protect them, to hold them, to lead them, to guide them. Butch, I'm talking to you right now. I'm going to invite your angels to come forward into your life while you go through this journey that you're going through now, my friend. Call upon your angels, Butch. Invite them into your life, invite them into your heart, invite them to hold you while you go through this most difficult time. Call upon them. And what role do angels have? They have as much of a role as you let them. They're always there and they're working their magic in the background. But the more you connect with your angels and invite them in, the more they'll show up and hold you, love you, support you. And like Peter wrote, that you can just swoop in and touch your heart. Sometimes you'll be in a horrific place, a crazy place, a divided place, a dark place. And you call upon your angels. And all of a sudden you'll feel this just gentle wind of grace blow through you. And you'll see that just some things all of a sudden fall into place. So call upon them. See what kind of miracles they can do. Angels have really been forgotten in the modern day. And it brings sadness to them. They want nothing more than just to help. And I want you to imagine that angels are like having a best friend on the other side who can pull some strings for you. And it's like, this world is a hard world. It's a difficult world. It's a messy world. It's a violent world. And our world is on fire right now. It's on fire. Just with this pandemic, with forest fires, global warming. The other day it was 100 degrees in the Arctic. That's crazy. It's literally on fire, our world. We need all the help we can get. And so let's just do this. Before we're done, I want to thank you all for all your support and your generous donations, for showing up with your beautiful hearts with me. And I'm going to invite all of our angels to come forward into our lives, to give us the strength to overcome addiction, to give us the strength to heal while we face cancer or suffering or pain or this pandemic, to give us the strength to love our kids, our children more deeply and fully, to be better partners, better children of God here on this path. So call upon your angel, invite them into your life. Invite them to open you to your innocence, to this sweetness, to this love. Show you a greater way of being here on planet Earth. And I'm going to invite you to notice directly as you're praying, as you're opening to this realm. Notice what happens energetically. Right away I start to feel an incredible brilliance, a light, a heat. And so I encourage you to open your heart and see what comes. See for yourself. See for yourself what comes. It's good to see you smile, Butch. It's good to see you smile. So my heart's with you all. Take good care. Thank you all so much for your support and your love. And if any of you, if I'm behind in communications and emails, all that stuff, just email it again. Take good care. And bye for now. See you next week.